Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Jan. I've founded the company Climeworks back in 2009, and I was asked to give a bit of an impression on the way from starting with an idea that was created back in the labs of ETH to a company of 45 employees up today. So 2 words about myself. I'm also a mechanical engineer. I studied at mechanical engineering at ETH, and basically as a result of a master project together with my colleague Chris, we founded the company Climeworks. And I'll start telling you a little bit about what Climeworks is doing, what the company is about, and then in a second step I'll tell you some more experiences on the way that on the way there where we stand today, so to say. So Climeworks capturing CO2 from air. The good thing about our company is that it's very easy to explain what we are doing. We're building machines that take out CO2 of ambient air. So a Climeworks CO2 collector that you see here takes an ambient air, such as the air around us here in this room, and extracts on the one hand pure concentrated CO2, and on the other hand you get a stream of CO2-free air. Now, why would you do that? The initial reason, and still one of our major market applications, is actually closely connected to the technical subject of this workshop here today and tomorrow. It's about basically energy storage. So what you see here is the concept of a process called power to liquids or power to gas. I'm sure many of you are aware of that or have heard about that. So it's the idea about that is that hydrocarbon fuels or also materials, so that can be natural gas, that can be diesel, gasoline, jet fuel, or plastics, they can be actually synthesized from or produced from CO2, water, and renewable energies. And that has been done in the past. And basically the technology to do this is available. However, then the question always was, well, if I produce materials or fuels from CO2, where is the CO2 coming from? And this is basically what's shown here, this missing piece of the cake. If the CO2 to produce these fuels can be captured from the air, what we can achieve is a closed carbon cycle, so a closed loop, basically. So what happens is we take renewable electricity, split water by electrolyzers, split CO2, produce any type of fuels. If those are used for the transportation sector, as shown here, fuels are burned, CO2 is released again to the atmosphere, and the CO2 can then be captured back from the air and be used for the production of new fuels again. And that means these fuels in the end are carbon neutral, so we can continue to use existing transportation infrastructure, using engines that exist, using petrol stations, a distribution network, and all these things that exist, but still do it in a CO2 neutral way. And at the same time, this is a way of storing and transporting renewable energy. So that's the basic idea behind that. There are many projects up and running, and more are evolving in Switzerland, Germany, Denmark, all these countries who are very active in renewable energy or transfer of the energy system. There is a need for storage, there is a need for balancing the grid, and Climeworks is actually part of many of these projects that are currently going on, several European Union projects, Horizon 2020 projects, where the production of fuels is done and CO2 is needed as one vital ingredient, and it should be captured from the air in order to close the cycle. Now, this was one too far. And there is a second application, which when we started the company back in 2009, we thought, well, that's something that's probably for 50 years down the road. That's not something we can focus on today. And this is about actual carbon removal, or so-called negative emission, meaning taking CO2 out of the air, store it somewhere underground with the sole purpose of reducing the carbon content of the atmosphere. However, in the last couple of years, this subject has developed quite strongly. We've been part of the last climate conferences, and if you've heard and followed what has happened in Paris at the COP21, resulting in the Paris Agreement, and then followed up at the COP22 in Morocco, where we were one of 20 companies presenting our approach to the worldwide community. Then you've maybe realized that this topic of carbon removal has become more and more emphasized in the last years. And basically, if we look at the IPCC modeling scenarios that build the basis of this 2-degree global warming target, which is the main part of the Paris Agreement, then most or almost all of these scenarios say that by mid of this century, so by 2050, large amounts, we're talking about 5 to 10 billion tons of CO2 per year, have to be extracted from the atmosphere in order to achieve these targets, because emission reduction will not proceed as fast as it would be required. So taking out CO2, actually taking it out of the air and storing it somewhere in order to reduce the carbon content, is, according to current state of the art, a vital ingredient to reach these targets. And in order to do so, so if by 2050, 10 billion tons of CO2 shall be extracted from the air, that is something where it's probably not enough to just start research on doing that now, but also to start deployment and start scaling these technologies. And we are currently working in a few projects into that direction, and we are currently foreseeing that in about a year from now, it will be possible that by Climeworks plant that is sitting at some place close to a storage site, it will be possible to actually buy negative emissions, so to reduce carbon emissions. There is currently not yet an official market. There is not a worldwide price for carbon, which is high enough to cover the costs of doing it as we are doing it today. So there will be a requirement for further technology development. However, many private corporations have set their carbon removal targets or their CO2 neutrality targets to something like, there are many companies saying by 2020 or 2025, we want to be carbon neutral. So if they want to do this, they have set this goal, maybe the board of directors has set this goal, and then they start implementing it. And what they'll find out is, well, 80% of this carbon neutral goal we can probably achieve by doing things like using biofuels, switching to renewable energy, using energy efficiency measures, insulate the buildings better, whatever the type of the company is. But most of them will find out, well, probably something like the last 20%, that's something we just can't do. We can't achieve it. And those will be the first targets for us. We can say, okay, these last 20%, which with today's technology, it's just not possible to reduce these emissions, because that might be emissions to some transportation, some air transportation where we need hydrocarbon fuels. We cannot mitigate this as of today, but these 20% we could take care of and take them out of the air as of today, and that can be an initial start for this market. So these are basically the two applications. Yeah, just an example here how these plants look like. This is a commercial size CO2 capture plant, 4 standard 40-foot shipping containers containing 18 of the base modules of our product, which is called a CO2 collector, in a similar way as a solar collector, because it's a modular approach. Such a plant would take 900 tons of CO2 out of the air per year, and we're actually commissioning our worldwide first commercial plant by the end of this month, which is quite exciting, something we've worked for 7 years towards this goal. Yeah, there's when we published the fact that this commercial plant would go online, we received quite a substantial media echo. There are some examples here. Nature magazine listed Climeworks technology at the end of 2015. They always publish a list of novel technologies to look out for the next year, and Climeworks was listed on number one to look out in 2016. Unfortunately, we didn't manage starting the plan in 2016, but it will happen now in a couple of weeks, so that's very nice. Again, a summary of the applications with a couple of numbers. I've talked about the latter two. There is one more initial application, which is a very much straightforward one, which has nothing to do with climate change or CO2 mitigation. That is just CO2 is also a product. So there's a worldwide market for CO2 as a gas or as a liquid, mostly in the food and beverage industry. So some of you have their bottles of mineral water standing here. This mineral water, a liter of sparkling water, contains about 7 grams of CO2 to produce the bubbles. So a beverage bottling factory that requires some thousands of tons of CO2 per year, and there are some of them which are sitting somewhere in the outback in Australia or somewhere in a Caribbean island where CO2 is extremely expensive, so you would pay a lot for the logistics to bring the CO2 there, and that is like the very first niche application where today it is already commercially very attractive for those companies to take a Climeworks plant, sit it there on site and extract the CO2 from the air directly on site, so to say. So that CO2 will go back to the atmosphere once the water is consumed, but it's an important application, and also from a business strategy, this was always something when we were starting pitching to investors in the very beginning. We were most importantly talking about this big vision, but it was very important as well to have this initial application where there is an existing market, where people are already buying our product today, and we don't need to bring up both to speed the product and the market at the same time, so that there's something to start with. And that was something that helped us a lot, and also our current customer discussions and projects that are in line, many of them are actually still in this area because it's a very interesting niche application, actually. Well, just since there are many technical people with a technical background here, one slide about the technology. How does that work? It's in principle a very simple system. It's a two-step filtering process. In the first step, air is passed through our proprietary filter system. CO2 is then captured at the surface of this material, so it's basically an adsorption process, so attaching of the CO2 to a solid porous material. It's like a sponge with a high surface area. And then in the second step, the system is closed, and we heat up the filter to about 100 degrees, and by changing the temperature, this bonding is released again, and we can extract concentrated CO2 from the filter again. And that can then be repeated over and over again. So it's basically a cyclic process with several units working in parallel. So in the end, you get a continuous product stream of the CO2. Patenting, that's an important issue. So we've about 9 patent families in our portfolio, which is a lot of work and also costs a lot of money. But it's been mentioned just before that it is something very important if you talk to people who invest large amounts of money into your company, that technology is protected in a solid way. Yes, this is just 2 pictures how the product portfolio looks like. So on the very left-hand side, this is the first installation we built, a demonstrating plant, which we now also released as a product because many companies were interested in this as for demonstration purposes. So there's a demonstrating plant capturing 2 tons of CO2 from air, and then all large-scale plants are built up of these standard modules that take 50 tons of CO2 from the air per year. Then a couple of words about the company. You see here basically the founding team and our first employee. So Chris and me, we founded the company back in 2009. Dominic joined us then very recently, actually. He was funded, and we mentioned this before. You are in this phase where you start, you don't have money, how you can proceed. And there was this competition Venture Kick. I'm sure many of you have heard of that. And we won all the 3 stages of Venture Kick. And at some point, well, in the first stage, you get 10,000 francs. So 10,000 francs, we were, oh, that's a lot of money. What can we do with that? So we were employed still by ATH. So we had a collaboration. So our salary was kind of covered in the very beginning. That was helpful. And then, well, we set up a homepage and did some marketing. Then 10,000 were gone. Then next stage, we got 20,000. Oh, that's even more money. What shall we do with that? And then we started building up some more things. But then sometime later, we got 100,000 Swiss francs, which was actually substantial. And we said, okay, now this is the point where we start the road. We start going, and we employ our first employee. We use this 100,000 to pay the salary of a person, to set up our own office. And from then, kind of the wheels started turning. So that was a very interesting experience to see, well, how actually we have now a chunk of money where we can pay a salary, and suddenly we have someone who's full-time working for our company. And this was very, very great experience. So then just before I go back to the story, how we get there, where are we today? 45 employees, 40 full-time equivalents, so quite a substantial growth. Over the last 12 months, we roughly doubled our team. Half of them are working in R&D and the other half in project execution, production, marketing, finance, and all the rest that is needed. We did up to now accomplished 3 financing rounds, so equity financing rounds with a total amount of 15 million Swiss francs, starting with 2, then 3, and then another 10 million back in 2016. And also acquired a quite large amount of public funding, grants, European Union projects. So it's a total of 20 million that has been invested into the company. And from the business side, probably the biggest achievement we made 4 years after the incorporation of the company is that we set up a industrial cooperation with Audi, with the car maker company. Audi has invested in the past into the production of renewable fuels. So there is a plant of Audi in northern Germany that produces synthetic natural gas from CO2 and renewable energy. And at some point they were at exactly this position that I described before. Well, in the long run, we need the CO2 in a sustainable way. So we need to run the CO2 in a cycle. Why not take it from the air? And then that was the point where Kleinworks came. We set up a collaboration. We have supplied Audi with demonstration plans for CO2 capture from the air and are continuing this way also on a technical collaboration. Well, this is now the goal where we were striving at since 2009. Basically, this is the first commercial plant which has the size of as I showed you this photo today. So 4 of these shipping containers, 900 tons of CO2 per year. This is roughly the size where commercial application starts making sense. For all smaller plants, the overhead is too big, so the plants are quite expensive compared to the amount of money you can earn with the CO2. So this is like the minimum commercial size. And I'll connect also a story with this plant. Actually, before the incorporation of the company, that was 2008, we did one of these courses offered by Institut für Jungunternehmen. It was called Venture Challenge, and we had the chance through 1 semester to set up a business plan. So we had this idea, CO2 capture. We had a very small reactor in the lab. We didn't really know what to do with it. We went to this course, and over 14 weeks we developed a business plan, started thinking about markets and applications. And then one of the members of our team there found out, oh, actually CO2 is used to fertilize greenhouses. So greenhouse operators, they buy CO2, put it in the greenhouse so they can get 20-30% more tomatoes and cucumbers out of it, because photosynthesis is working better with more CO2. So then we started looking around Zurich, where are greenhouses that we can serve with our CO2, and we found this one greenhouse, and actually we started talking to these Gebrüder Meyer, so 2 guys who run several greenhouses actually in the vicinity of Zurich, and we went to them and said, hey, we have this idea, we have CO2, do you want to buy our CO2? And back in 2008, I think we said, in 2 years we have the big plant, and that'll sit next to you, and we'll get it running. I said, yeah, why not? And let's do it. They sent us a letter of intent that helped us a lot also to gain future business plan competitions. And well, I think what was an important ingredient to get there where we are today is that we were like really investing in this long-term relation, and we were a bit stubborn, just saying we're going to do this, and it took at the end, well, 4 times longer. So we said 2 years, it was 8 years in the end, but we always keep this relation with them. At some point they invested, they bought CO2 from other parties because they said, well, we can't wait so long, but let's keep the relation ongoing and let's see how it goes. And we always talked to them like once every other month, and at some point we were at a position that we had actually scaled our technology, and then we called them back, said, okay, now we're ready, we're setting up a contract. We got also funding from Bundesamt für Energie, that was back in 2014, and from then we started going on, and in 3 weeks from now we'll set this plant into operation, and the first batch of CO2 will run into this greenhouse and fertilize the tomatoes and the cucumbers in there. So let's say, very exciting moment to us. A couple of pictures around that. That's the process center unit, just to give you an idea of the dimensions. So this is some impressions from our production, where these CO2 capture plants are built. Here the manufacturing of the CO2 collectors. And this is basically where we stand today. And actually, let me check the timing if I still have. I think it's okay. That's great. So I'll take 5 more minutes. I prepared 2 slides here about the history, and I've said already several things, but maybe I'll repeat some things, but I'll add some other things. What were the steps on the way there? What did we do in order to incorporate the company? And I'll start back in 2003. In 2003, I started studying mechanical engineering at ETH. I came originally from Hamburg. I came to Zurich, and on the first day I met Chris, so actually my business partner. We met on the very first day of studying, and we asked each other, hey, what do you want to do later? Why are you here? And both of us actually said, I want to found a company one day. So we had this idea really for a long term in our head, and then we went through university, 3-4 years, and at some point we were close to our masters, and we said, okay, we have to found a company, so what shall we do? We should actually plan this and go further. We then designed our last year of our studies the way that we participated in different projects to look out for, well, which could be the most promising one to start with, and ended actually up with doing our master thesis in the lab of Professor Aldo Steinfeld at ETH, who was working on CO2 capture. And when we were completing or nearly to completion of our master thesis, we realized, well, it's not yet ready for commercialization, but it's very promising in terms of a business case. And I think that's one advice I can give. Like, a good technology is one thing, but a good story and a good business case around it is even more important to my experience. So this is something we realized. We said, okay, we need some more work to do. In order to do this, we set up a collaboration with ETH, with our professor. He offered us a position. We could still work on this. We worked only half-time for ETH, half-time for our company. We incorporated the company, and we started developing what was needed in the first place at the laboratory of ETH. Well, then, this I told, we went through several business plan competitions. We won the venture kick. We got our first employee, and then kind of the wheels started turning in the way that we knew, okay, now we have money for 1 year, and then we need more money at the end of this year. So we need to do something about that. And that was when we come back to 2011. Beginning of 2011, we started pitching to investors. So we were at the position that the technology was working. We had the proof that it could work. We hadn't scaled it yet, but it was working on a laboratory scale, and we started to pitch, started to present our business plan, present our ideas, and we managed finally to get a funding of 2.2 million francs in the first financing round, which was quite substantial and which allowed us to set up a team. So we employed more people. Then we were, the end of 2011, already 5 employees. We got some public funding, this Eurostars there, and then we had the money to set up an industrial infrastructure. So we built like industrial test systems, and we built our first scale-up system. What you see here, this is the first generation of our demonstration plant. We were 7 employees at that time, and that was a scale-up of a factor of 1,000. So starting with a small laboratory reactor that captures like some grams of CO2 per day, then we went to some kilos of CO2 per day. So that was really 3 orders of magnitude, actually, of scaling. Developed that further. We acquired the first industrial project with 10 employees at that time, and also, well, 2 million sounds a lot, but if you have to pay 10 people, then it's not that much. And back in 2014, we needed more money, so we started pitching again. So we went into this cycle that every 2 years, which is probably quite common, there's more funding needed, and acquired another 3 million of funding from our existing and also new investors. And well, based on that, we were able to develop our full-scale product. The CO2 collector is again as the first generation plant you see here. We went then into the engineering of a full-scale commercial plant, which you see here, which was the basis for our current project that is now realized. And we set up an assembly and production line, and finally ended up with an industrial plant as we have it sitting there today. So in the meantime, it's not on the slide, we had another significant financing round beginning of 2016 of 10 million, and that will bring us probably another while forward, but there might be or will probably more be coming. Yes, this from my side a bit of an example how a way could go, starting with an idea and turning it into something larger with a team of people working on transferring that into a product on the market. Thank you.